Hi and welcome to Jessie James Beads. My name is Jem and today we're looking at the Purple Cosmos collection. Think the beauty of the night sky, distant galaxies, the Milky Way, all kinds of beauty. Let's head down to the board and we'll take a look at the strand we're going to be working with today. So here at Jessie James Beads, we've brought you this beautiful duo strand in deep space blue. Now, sandstone is a created material. Sometimes legend has it that a monk accidentally kicked some copper filings into a vat of glass. Others have it that a young apprentice accidentally added filings into a mix on the Venetian specialist glass making islands. So actually, during the 17th century, it was created by slowly cooling metallic particles in molten silica with cobalt to add that glorious colour. Now it is exactly like the night sky, as you'd imagine it on the most perfect, clear night. You can see hundreds and hundreds of dazzling light points in this lovely, lustrous stone. It's beautiful. So whilst it's not a natural gemstone, it is very widely and highly regarded in the industry as something that is very durable and very, very beautiful. So having the beautiful oval and rectangular pads, and then we have some barrel beads and smaller ovals as well, alongside some gorgeous spaces in that silver daisy style and some little kind of wheel or heshy shape with some gorgeous crystals in there as well. So I'm going to cut this and see what I can make with you today, and then we'll go through a demonstration from Jessie James Beads. So in keeping with that cosmos theme, I thought we would make Cosmic Trails earrings today. Now I've chosen to use the large oval pad shaped beads. You could also go for the rectangular ones. If you don't want to go for two, as a drop, it's not overly large. We all know I like a long drop earring. This isn't particularly long. You could actually extend that down to have three, or you could even just go for one. But today we're going to be working with that beautiful bead in the blue goldstone, and we're only going to be using a single piece of wire. Now I've got an earring finding ready to go, and I'm going to create with two of those oval shaped beads. Now the wire we're working with is a silver plated medium temper copper, and this is 18 gauge round. I have a 12-inch length to begin with. I'm just going to warm that through a couple of times to make it nice and pliable. The first thing that I will do is check that I have already flush cut the end. Let's scooch those up slightly to make sure that the finish on my jewellery is neat and tidy. I'm going to use my memory wire finishing pliers to create a spiral with 2 circuits of wire. You can use round nose pliers or the smallest pin on your multi-step bail makers. We're going to begin by creating almost a circular form. If I show you that sideways, it's not all the way round. And what this enables me to do is to grip that arcing form and just turn the wire around so I get a nice round centre to my double spiral. When you're creating flat spirals such as this, going slow is the way to make them neat and tidy. Also, every time I open and close my pliers, I'm actually strengthening this part of the design. I'm just going to flip that over. Now I have got 1 and 2 circuits of wire from that start point, and I'm going to pull that away at a right angle to that main section. Just going to warm that through one more time to make sure it's nice and smooth and straight. What I'm going to do now is add both of my chosen beads on. If you're only working with one, or if you're working with the different shapes, then do that right now. And I'm going to draw that all the way down. Now when I make earrings that have this spiral design at the bottom, I like them to be in opposition to each other. So whereas the spiral on this side is working anti-clockwise, I will endeavour to make this one work clockwise so that they match in an equal and opposite fashion. The biggest, most important step in this design today is a very simplistic design, absolutely available to total beginners to wire wrapping. The most important part is that we put a large gap up at the top of the design before we bend that wire sideways. Now I'm bending that sideways and away so that that bend happens in the same orientation as the spiral itself. So I've got the wire coming away, it's hitting everything on the desk because obviously, and I'm again going to use my little memory wire finishing pliers to create a small circular form up at the top, and that will be a repeatable shape and size, and that's why I like these little pliers. If you don't have access to a set of pliers like this, you can simply pop a mark with marker pen on your round nose pliers, or remember which step of your bail makers you used. Once I have that ready, I'm going to give it a very gentle squish. Please note that I'm not squishing across any wires that cross each other, only across the round form itself. A little gentle squish there will enable me to keep that nice and strong. Now the tail again is going to hit everything, but all I'm doing here is wrapping that tail all the way around once, back over in the same direction it started from. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a squish and make that nice and neat and tidy. When you're working with wire wrapping and generally working with wire in jewellery making, you need to find ways to make it as easy as possible for yourself. So I've just flipped the design over so that I can work towards the right because I'm right dominant, but you can obviously flip that around to suit yourself and whichever hand is stronger for you. I'm just going to add some extra warmth into this next piece of wire, because what I want to do is to trace this around the outside of that bead. Now I don't want it to cross in front of or behind, and I want to keep those pad beads in the same orientation as the loop at the top and the spiral at the bottom. So I'm going to pinch as firmly as I can, draw that wire all the way around the outside of the bead to create a little bit of a metallic halo. So you'll just need to hold that bead into position, make sure that there's enough space for the bead to sit inside that halo before you pinch that wire into position, draw that all the way around the core, keeping that spiral around the wire as tight as possible. Again, just warm through the next couple of inches, and then we're going to do the same on the lower of the two beads, if you are indeed using both of them. A little bit of warmth goes a long way. Give that a little bit of a pull between thumb and forefinger, and you'll notice that suddenly it's ready to work. So let's hold that second bead in position, draw that halo of wire around the outside, draw the tail around that spiral, and we're going to just bring that back up so it circles all the way around one time only. Now if you find that the wire is starting to come across the front of your bead, you can pull that back just a little bit, pinch a little bit more firmly, and take care to just do that as soon as you notice it. What you can then do is give it a little bit of a set by very, very gently just pushing that down. So let's have a look and a little bit of an assessment of what we've got so far. I'm quite happy with that. The bead is spinning. So for me, I want these beads to sit still today. So we're going to add this cosmic trail over the surface. That would be a very erratic journey if you were indeed flying a spacecraft. So let's try not to do that. I'm going to again warm that wire through. Now I've gone for a little bit of a wiggle in two directions there, so I'm going to do the same thing this time. I'm going to just warm that through, and what I'm doing here is I'm pinching my thumb down on top of the bead and drawing the wire around over the top of my thumb. Let me just show you that sideways, but still against the wire. So you can see we've got that first delicious little curve. Pull that a little bit tighter and then repeat the same thing. So I'm putting a little bit of pressure just here over the wire, but I'm again using my thumb to guide where that wire comes back. So we've got another curve going back in the opposite direction. If you just want to have one direction then the other, you absolutely can, but I'm going to go for 3 little switches in changing that direction. So again, give that wire a little bit of a warm. It will start to get tense, and the reason for this is when you warm the wire, you excite the electrons inside that copper sort of connective chain of metallic elements, and they kind of lose their grip just a little bit, and as they cool down, they grip each other a little bit more firmly. So repeatedly warming that with the 18 gauge wire whilst you're working on the piece is absolutely fine. You wouldn't want to do it thousands of times because you'll end up fracturing the wire. But whilst we're doing these small movements, it's absolutely fine. So again, I'm going to pinch just at this point, use my body to create that curve. So it's just the top of my thumb. Just here, you can see the dimple that I've put in my skin by pressing down firmly. Now, I have arthritis in this wrist and several of these finger joints, as you can probably tell by how swollen they are. But it's just for a short moment of time. So if it gets a little bit much for you, put it down, come back to it later. Once we've covered that first bead with those little swooshes of wire, I'm going to pinch again, draw that wire all the way around one time. So we've gone around the core and you'll see that the lower bead is no longer shifting. Now, beads are often drilled not entirely symmetrically, so if you find that your bead sits better in one direction than the other, make sure it's sitting in the preferred direction before you add the next layer of little swooshes. So again, a little bit of warming, 2 or 3 times is plenty, and I'm going to use my thumb to generate that first smooth, it's almost like a meandering river. Give it a little bit of a pull, holding firmly the wire against the bead. And this is one of the beautiful reasons for using a bead made out of the blue sandstone. It has a vitreous luster, which means it's very glassy. It's very, very shiny. You can see those beautiful platelets of metallic material shimmering in them, but it's also really beautifully firm. So you are able to press down on it whilst you bring that wire in the opposite direction to create another meandering turn. Pinch again and bring that back on itself. So you can obviously play around with those a little bit. If you want them to be completely symmetrical, take a little longer than I have. I like the natural meandering fashion. So when we get back up to the top, I'm going to pinch very firmly to make sure that I'm going to keep those designs good and solid. Bring that wire all the way around 1.5 times. So this is the front of my design with those 2 spirals going in opposite directions. So let's just turn this over to the rear of the design, and then we're going to trim away with flush cutters to make a nice smooth truncation to the design. Always look twice. Make sure you're cutting the correct wire, because it's kind of sad if you've put the effort in and then you cut the loop off at the top. So take a moment. You don't need to be as fast as I am. And then very softly tighten everything up. So I'm going to support underneath and just make sure that those wires are moving around the core as tightly as they can, and then just give it a gentle little pinch. We're then going to add in an earring finding. So I'm just going to pinch across to make sure that's nice and strong, open it up sideways and pop my earring into the design, and then close that up. These are homemade headpin earring findings because I couldn't find any pre-made ones. So there you have your beautiful galaxy-inspired, from the Purple Cosmos collection, Cosmic Trails earrings. I hope that you've enjoyed that. This is Jem for Jessie James Beads, and this is the Purple Cosmos collection today.